AITA for leaving my marriage after realizing my husband loved what I did for him, not who I actually am. I, 36F, recently asked my husband, 38M, of 12 years for a separation. Not because he cheated, not because he was cruel, but because I finally understood that he loved the role I played in his life, not the actual person I am. When I stopped performing that role perfectly, his love evaporated. Now everyone, including our families and mutual friends, is telling me I'm throwing away a good marriage over nothing. I'm starting to question whether discovering you're loved for function rather than personhood is actually a valid reason to leave. The perfect wife. I need to start by acknowledging that on paper, I had the marriage everyone wants. My husband, David, is handsome, successful, faithful, and by all traditional measures, a good man. He didn't hit me, didn't cheat, didn't gamble or drink or do any of the obviously terrible things that justify divorce in people's minds. He just never actually knew me. We met when I was 24 and he was 26. I was working as a paralegal. He was finishing his MBA. He was ambitious, charming, and had his life planned out with impressive precision. Graduate at 27, make junior partner by 30, marry by 28, first kid by 30, house in the suburbs by 32. I fit perfectly into his timeline. Our courtship was traditional and romantic. He brought me flowers, took me to nice restaurants, introduced me to his family quickly. His mother loved me immediately. I was polite, came from a good family, had a respectable job, and most importantly, I was easy, in the sense that I didn't cause problems or have complicated needs. 6 months after we met, he proposed. I said yes because he seemed like exactly what I was supposed to want. Stable. Reliable. A man with a plan. I didn't realize I was auditioning for a role, not beginning a partnership. The construction of the perfect life. The first few years were good. Or I thought they were good. In retrospect, I was just very good at being what David needed. He needed a wife who would host dinner parties for his colleagues. I learned to cook elaborate meals and make conversation with strangers. He needed a wife who looked good at company events. I dressed well, got my hair done regularly, maintained the right weight. He needed a wife who managed the household flawlessly. I kept the house clean, paid the bills on time, remembered everyone's birthdays, sent thank you cards. He needed a wife who didn't burden him with problems. I handled my stress privately, never complained about being tired, always had a smile ready when he came home. I was so good at it. I was the wife everyone praised. David's colleagues would say, "You're so lucky to have her." His mother would tell her friends I was the daughter she never had. Our friends would say we had the perfect marriage. And I believed it. I thought being good at marriage meant you had a good marriage. The cracks begin. The first crack appeared around year 7. I'd had a terrible day at work. A case I'd spent months on had fallen apart due to an error that wasn't even mine. I'd been publicly blamed by the attorney I worked under, humiliated in front of the entire office. I came home in tears. David was in his office on a call. I waited for him to finish 45 minutes, and when he finally emerged, I tried to tell him what happened. "That sounds really frustrating," he said, glancing at his watch. "Listen, I have another call in 10 minutes. Can we talk about this later?" Later never came. He never asked about it again. I told myself he was busy. He was up for partner. He had a lot on his mind. My problems could wait. But I noticed after that a pattern. When I had a good day, David was happy to hear about it for about 2 minutes. When I had a bad day, he'd find a reason to disengage. A call to make. Work to finish. Suddenly remembering he needed to check something. He never asked follow-up questions about my life. He never remembered details about my work or my friends. He'd confuse my colleague Sarah with my college roommate Sarah. He'd forget which cases I was working on. Once, he asked me how my father was doing 3 months after I'd told him my dad had passed away. "Oh right," he'd said. "Sorry, I forgot. Work has been crazy." I started testing it, in small ways. I'd mention something about my day. If he didn't ask a follow-up question, I'd bring it up the next day as if I'd never mentioned it. He never noticed. I could tell him the same story 3 times and he'd react like it was new information each time. He didn't know me. He'd never known me. He just knew I played my role well. The role becomes clear. Around year 9, I started noticing what David did pay attention to. He noticed immediately if dinner wasn't ready on time. He noticed if the house wasn't perfectly clean. He noticed if I forgot to pick up his dry cleaning or didn't buy the specific brand of coffee he liked. He noticed, in other words, when I failed at my function. But he didn't notice when I changed my hair dramatically. He didn't notice when I started reading different books, listening to different music, developing new interests. He didn't notice when I was sad or lonely or struggling. I realized one day that David could probably list every task I performed for him, but couldn't tell you my favorite color, my biggest fear, or what I dreamed about. I tested this theory during a dinner party with his colleagues. One of the wives asked me about my work. I started to answer when David interrupted. "Oh, she's a paralegal. Very detail-oriented, keeps everything organized. It's actually perfect for managing our household, too." He'd reduced my entire career to how it served his needs. Later that night, after everyone left, I asked him, "Do you know what kind of law I work in?" "Corporate stuff, right?" "Family law. I've been in family law for 8 years." "Same thing." He was already scrolling through his phone. "It's not the same thing at all." "Okay, fine. Family law. Is there a reason you're upset about semantics right now?" "I'm not upset about semantics. I'm upset that you don't know basic things about my career." "I know you're a paralegal. What else do I need to know?" The question wasn't defensive. It was genuine. He truly didn't understand why he would need to know more. The illness. The breaking point came last year. I got severely sick, a nasty case of pneumonia that landed me in the hospital for 3 days and left me recovering at home for 2 weeks. For the first time in our marriage, I couldn't perform my role. I couldn't cook, couldn't clean, could barely get out of bed. I needed help with basic tasks. David's reaction was telling. The first few days, he was concerned. He visited the hospital, brought me things I needed, called to check on me. This was the good husband behavior he knew he was supposed to perform. But once I was home and recovering, the concern evaporated. He became increasingly frustrated that the house was messy, that we were eating takeout, that I couldn't do the laundry or grocery shopping. "When do you think you'll be back to normal?" he asked on day 5. The doctor said 2 weeks minimum. 2 weeks? That's a long time. "It's pneumonia, David. I could barely breathe 3 days ago." I know. It's just a lot." "What's a lot?" "Doing everything myself. I didn't realize how much you handled until you couldn't handle it." There it was. Not "I'm worried about you." Not "I miss you being well." Just frustration that his life was inconvenienced by my illness. On day 8, his mother came over to help. She cleaned, did laundry, made meals. David was visibly relieved. The role was being filled, just by a different person. When I was finally better, David said, "I'm glad you're back." The house was falling apart. Not "I missed you." Not "I'm glad you're healthy." The house was falling apart. The experiment. After I recovered, I decided to try something. I wanted to know if David loved me or just loved what I did. I stopped doing some of my tasks perfectly. Not in an obvious way. I didn't stop doing them entirely. I just did them a little less well. I made dinner, but simple things instead of elaborate meals. I cleaned, but not as thoroughly. I still managed the household, but I stopped anticipating David's every need before he voiced them. His reaction was immediate. "Is something wrong?" he asked after the 3rd night of simple pasta instead of my usual cooking. "No, why? You seem off." "Off how?" "I don't know. Different. Distant." I wasn't distant. I was just not performing. "I'm the same as I've always been," I said. "No, something's changed. You're not yourself." And there it was. Yourself meant the version of you that serves me perfectly. I pushed further. I started pursuing my own interests. I'd always wanted to take art classes, but never had time because I was too busy managing David's life. I enrolled in a pottery class 2 evenings a week. "Pottery?" David looked confused. "Since when are you interested in pottery?" "I've always wanted to try it." "You never mentioned it." "I did, actually. 3 times. You probably don't remember." "Well, 2 nights a week seems like a lot. What about dinner? I'll make dinner before I go, or you can handle it those nights. I don't know how to cook. You're 38 years old. You can learn. He looked at me like I'd suggested something outrageous. Over the next few months, I slowly reclaimed pieces of myself I'd abandoned to be the perfect wife. I spent time with friends David had never particularly liked. I read books that interested me instead of the intelligent books that looked good on our coffee table. I stopped wearing the clothes David preferred and started dressing how I actually wanted. And I watched David become increasingly uncomfortable with this person I was becoming, or rather, this person I had always been but had hidden. The confrontation. It came to a head 6 months ago. David sat me down for a serious conversation. I think you should talk to someone, he said. A therapist? Yes. I think you're going through something. A midlife crisis or depression or something. What makes you think that? You're not yourself lately. You're different. You don't seem happy. Actually, I'm happier than I've been in years. He looked genuinely confused. How can you say that? You've changed everything about your life. I haven't changed. I've just stopped pretending. Pretending what? To be the person you wanted me to be. What are you talking about? I've never asked you to be anyone but yourself. Yes, you have. You've asked me to be the perfect wife, the perfect hostess, the perfect household manager. You've asked me to have no needs, no problems, no identity outside of serving your life. That's not fair. I've never asked you to serve me. You didn't have to ask. It was the only version of me you paid attention to. This is crazy. I love you. Do you? Or do you love how I make your life easier? Those are the same thing. The room went silent. He looked shocked that he'd said it out loud. I felt something settle in my chest, a terrible, clarifying realization. No, David. They're not. The test. I decided to try one more thing. A final test. For 2 weeks, I changed how I interacted with David. Instead of asking about his day and listening to him talk about work, I talked about my day first. I shared stories about my friends, my pottery class, my thoughts on articles I'd read. I counted how long it took before he changed the subject or zoned out. Average, 47 seconds. I counted how long he would talk about his own interests when I asked. Average, 23 minutes. I tried sharing a problem I was having at work, a genuinely stressful situation I needed to process. He listened for 2 minutes before saying, "Have you tried just not letting it bother you?" 3 days later, when he had a problem at work, I said the same thing. "Have you tried just not letting it bother you?" He was offended. That's dismissive. This is actually serious. And my problem wasn't. That was different. How? He couldn't articulate how. He just knew his problems mattered, and mine were somehow less significant. I asked him to name my 3 closest friends. He could name one, got the other 2 wrong. I asked him what I'd been reading lately. Self-help books. I'd been reading historical fiction. I told him about each book I finished. I asked him what I wanted to do for my upcoming birthday. Dinner somewhere nice? I told him weeks ago I wanted to go to an art museum 2 hours away, spend the day there, just the 2 of us talking and exploring. He hadn't heard any of it. He never heard any of it. Unless it related to him or his needs, it didn't register. I asked for a separation on a Tuesday evening. David had just come home from work, expecting dinner. I'd ordered pizza. We need to talk. He looked at the pizza boxes with visible disappointment before sitting down. About what? I want a separation. He laughed. Actually laughed. What? Why? Because I don't think you love me. I think you love the role I play in your life. That's ridiculous. Of course I love you. What do you love about me? Everything. You're my wife. Specifically. What specifically do you love about me? He looked frustrated. I don't understand what you want me to say. I want you to tell me something about me, who I am as a person that you love. Not what I do for you. Who I am. You're kind. And smart. And beautiful. Those are generic adjectives. Tell me something specific. What makes me laugh? What am I afraid of? What do I dream about? Silence. What's my favorite book? Silence. What's something I'm passionate about that has nothing to do with you? Silence. David, you can't answer because you don't know. You've never known. Because you've never asked. You've never cared to know. That's not true. I care about you. You care about what I do for you. When I stopped doing those things perfectly, you noticed immediately. When I started developing my own interests, you called it a midlife crisis. When I got sick and couldn't maintain the household, you were frustrated by the inconvenience, not worried about my health. I was worried about your health. For 3 days. Then, you were just annoyed your life was disrupted. You're twisting everything. I'm seeing everything clearly for the first time. And what I see is that you married a role, not a person. You wanted a wife who would make your life comfortable and easy. And I played that role so well that neither of us noticed I disappeared into it. So, what, you're just giving up? 12 years, and you're just giving up? I'm not giving up. I'm admitting that what we have isn't a marriage. It's an arrangement where I provide services in exchange for financial stability and social acceptability. That's insulting. It's accurate. He stood up, pacing. This is insane. Every marriage has roles. Every partnership has divisions of labor. You're acting like I've committed some terrible crime by appreciating what you do. You don't just appreciate what I do. It's the only thing you see. When I tried to be more than that role, you were uncomfortable with it. You wanted me to go back to being the person who existed to make your life easier. Because that person was happy. You were happy before you started all this introspection nonsense. I was performing happiness. There's a difference. I don't believe that. I think you're going through something and you're blaming me for it. Okay. Then answer me this. Who am I? If you took away all the things I do for you, all the roles I play, who am I? He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Nothing came out. That's my answer, I said quietly. The aftermath. David agreed to the separation but insisted it was temporary. You need space to work through whatever this is, he said, still framing my self-awareness as a problem to be solved. I moved into a small apartment. For the first time in 12 years, I lived alone. The first week was terrifying. The silence felt loud. I kept waiting for someone to need something from me. For tasks to appear. For a role to play. Nothing came. I had to figure out who I was without anyone watching. Slowly, carefully, I started to remember. I'd loved painting in college. I signed up for more art classes. I'd loved reading poetry. I started going to poetry readings at a local bookstore. I'd loved hiking. I started going on solo hikes every weekend. I made friends who knew this version of me, the real version. People who asked about my thoughts, my feelings, my experiences. People who seemed genuinely interested in who I was. I went on a few dates. Men who asked questions and remembered the answers. Who wanted to know about my childhood, my fears, my dreams. The contrast with David was staggering. One date asked me what I was passionate about. I talked for 20 minutes about a social justice issue I'd been reading about. He listened, asked follow-up questions, shared his own thoughts. When I got home, I cried. Not because the date was special, it was fine, but because it had been so long since someone had been genuinely interested in my thoughts that I'd forgotten what it felt like. The pushback. Everyone had opinions about my decision. David's mother called me selfish. He's a good man. He provides for you. What more do you want? I want to be known, I said. Marriage isn't about being known. It's about commitment and partnership. Commitment to what? He doesn't even know what books I read. That's trivial. You're throwing away a marriage over trivia. My own mother was barely better. Every wife feels unappreciated sometimes. You learn to live with it. Did you? She got very quiet. That's not the point. Maybe it is the point. Friends from our married life sided with David. He's devastated, they told me. He misses you so much. What does he miss? What do you mean? What specifically does he miss about me? They couldn't answer either. Because David couldn't tell them. Because what he actually missed was his clean house, his elaborate dinners, his smoothly running life. He missed his maid, his cook, his personal assistant. He didn't miss me because he'd never known me. 3 months into the separation, David asked to meet. He wanted to work on things. We met at a coffee shop. He looked tired, thinner. Part of me felt guilty. I've been thinking a lot, he said. About what you said. About not knowing you. Okay. And I want to know you. I want to try. Can you give me another chance? I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe he'd actually heard me. Maybe change was possible. What do you want to know? Whatever you want to tell me. I'm listening. I tested him. What would you ask me if you could ask me anything? He thought for a long moment. What do you need from me to be happy? My heart sank. Even his attempt to know me was framed around what I needed from him. How he could fix this. How he could get back the wife who made his life work. That's not the right question, David. What do you mean? The question isn't what I need from you. The question is, who am I? What do I care about? What makes me feel alive? What am I afraid of? What do I hope for? Okay. What are you afraid of? But I could see it in his eyes. He was going through the motions. Saying the right words. He still didn't actually want to know. He wanted to do whatever it took to get his life back to how it was. I'm afraid, I said slowly, that I spent 12 years of my life being loved for what I could do instead of who I am. And I'm afraid that you'll never understand why that's not enough. But I do want to know who you are. No, you want to know. There's a difference. You think if you ask the right questions and say the right things, I'll come back and everything will return to normal. But David, normal is the problem. So what are you saying? We're just done. I'm saying I don't think you can love someone you've never tried to know. And I don't think you can suddenly start knowing someone when the only reason you're trying is to get them back. That's not fair. Maybe not. But it's true. 6 months later. The divorce was finalized last month. David was bitter about it. He told people I'd changed and given up on us. He never told them why. I heard through mutual friends that he's dating someone new already. Someone young, ambitious, eager to please. Someone who will probably play the role I played until she, too, realizes she's disappeared into it. I hope she figures it out faster than I did. As for me, I'm learning who I am. It's harder than it sounds. 36 years old, and I'm still discovering basic things about myself. I like spicy food. I'd spent years making mild food because David preferred it. I like staying up late. I'd gone to bed early because that's when David went to bed. I like bold colors. My entire wardrobe had been neutrals because David said they were classy. I'm painting again. Really painting, not the tentative hobby version. My apartment is full of canvases, some good, some terrible, all mine. I'm louder than I thought I was. Funnier. Angrier. Sadder. More complicated. I'm a person, not a function. And I'm lonely sometimes and scared sometimes and uncertain most of the time. But I'm also more alive than I've been in over a decade. Because here's what I learned. Being loved for your role isn't being loved at all. It's being used, even if the person using you doesn't realize they're doing it. Even if they think they love you. Even if they're hurt when you leave. You can be a perfect wife, a perfect employee, a perfect daughter, a perfect friend, and still be completely unknown. Still be utterly alone. The role will never be enough. Because you're not a role. You're a person. And persons deserve to be seen. So, AITA? Reddit, I need to know. Am I the asshole for leaving a marriage where I wasn't being abused or cheated on, just not actually known? For deciding that being loved for my function isn't the same as being loved for myself? Everyone says I had a good husband, a good marriage, that I'm throwing away something valuable over something intangible. Maybe they're right. Maybe expecting to be known, to be seen, to matter as more than the sum of my usefulness. Maybe that's asking too much. Maybe that's not what marriage is supposed to be. Or maybe I'm not wrong. Maybe you can't love someone you've never bothered to know. Maybe being a good husband requires more than providing financially and not cheating. Maybe I deserve to be more than a well-functioning appliance in someone else's life. I honestly don't know anymore. Part of me feels free. Part of me feels selfish. Both things are true at the same time. So tell me, AITA for leaving because I realized I was loved for my role, not for myself? For wanting to be known instead of just useful? For choosing the terrifying freedom of being alone over the comfortable imprisonment of being valuable? Was I wrong to leave? Or was staying the real betrayal of myself? Edit. I'm overwhelmed by the responses. To those sharing similar experiences, I see you and I'm sorry. To those saying I should have communicated more, I tried for years. You can't make someone curious about you. To those saying I'm selfish, maybe. But I'd rather be selfish than disappear completely. Edit 2. Someone asked what I would say to my younger self. I'd say, the first time you notice someone doesn't remember what you told them, pay attention. The first time you feel lonely in their presence, pay attention. The first time you shrink yourself to fit their expectations, pay attention. Those moments matter. Don't ignore them for a decade. Edit 3. David texted me yesterday. I finally understand what you meant. I'm sorry. I don't think he does understand, but I appreciate the attempt. It's too late, but I appreciate it. Final edit. To everyone asking if I'm happy, I'm getting there. Happiness isn't the right word yet. I'm present. I'm real. I'm seen, even if only by myself. And that's a start. That's more than I had. The strangest thing about leaving a marriage where you played a role is realizing you're grieving someone who never existed. David didn't lose me. He lost his idea of me. And I didn't lose him. I lost the person I'd pretended to be for him. We're both mourning versions of people who were never real. But I'd rather be real and alone than fictional and partnered. I'd rather be known by few than useful to many. I'd rather take up space than disappear into service. That's not selfish. That's survival.